Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Snakes Territory. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman. That is Jack Sommers on the screen next to me. And Jack, the Diamondbacks just played an absolutely wild weekend of baseball out at Wrigley Field. And it feels like we have a whole lot of news to get to about a variety of topics today.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy out there in Wrigley. I was thinking of our friends and colleagues, Nick Picoro and Steve Gilbert, sitting there in the cold, wet rain and trying to get out of Dodge. And then after all those rain delays, extra innings. So if they were struggling, you can imagine what it was like for the players. It had to be a rough day.
We were planning to spend a good chunk of today's show talking about the bullpen and some of the storylines relating to AJ Puk and Justin Martinez. We'll get into that here shortly. But first, just before we hit record on this episode, we got word that the Diamondbacks have made what at least felt like a somewhat surprising move to me initially. Jack, I want to know your thoughts. But the Diamondbacks have optioned outfielder Jake McCarthy to Triple-A Reno. As you can see on your screen here, the start of the season has not been kind to McCarthy. He's gone 3 for 41, has a 268 OPS. Jack, I'll kick it over to you. What are your initial thoughts on the Diamondbacks making this decision?
My initial reaction was surprised, but it's easily justifiable. I just thought they'd give it a little bit more time, but they must really not like what they're seeing swing wise, and they want him to go work it out. We tend to look at results in a funny way, and we always preach, don't get caught up in recency bias and small sample sizes. And oftentimes we complain that the team takes too long to make a move. On the other hand, especially a lot of fans, but in this case, it's clear that Jake made some changes with his swing, maybe trying to power up a little bit in spring training. And it backfired on him, and he ended up not hitting for power and not hitting for anything. I mean, he's only struck out 6 times.
Yeah.
It's not that he's never making contact. It's just really weak contact. So he's got to go back to the drawing board.
Jake McCarthy, unfortunately, is not new to this happening to him. Pretty similar situation back in 2023, where Jake was coming off a very, very good 2022 season. He was hitting third for Torey Lovullo, for a pretty decent stretch in the second half of that year. But Jake did not look particularly good at the plate to start 2023, and he's not looked particularly great at the plate to start 2025 either. I guess the Diamondbacks, Jack, are acting a little bit quicker this time. That move happened on April 25th of 2023. That was the date that Jake McCarthy was optioned. So I guess we're a few days before that on April 21st here. But yeah, as you said, Jake wasn't striking out. It's just that, he's never been a guy to make a ton of hard contact to begin with. And what we've seen so far is basically just no hard contact whatsoever. His hard hit rate is down, I believe, under 20%. Another thing that stands out to me with this, Jack, is that Jake McCarthy's line drive rate is just over 11%, which is extremely, extremely low. And for someone like him who isn't going to be hitting the ball super hard, you need to hit your fair share of line drives, right? If you're hitting a soft fly ball or a soft ground ball, those are not going to turn into hits for you all that often. And so far, for whatever reason, Jake has just not been hitting, those soft liners, those, medium exit velo liners to the outfield that were responsible for so many of his hits last season.
Yeah, that's a great point about the line drives. I mean, again, that goes back to getting away from who he was, which is a little strange because when we spoke to him, it didn't sound like he was talking about that so much. But at the end of the day, that's clearly what he was doing. I think in spring training, he had some early slug to the pull side, and maybe he was going after that a little bit more, and it cost him.
The corresponding move to this, I don't believe has been made official, but we do have a report from Gambo that the Diamondbacks, that he expects the Diamondbacks to call up outfielder Jorge Barrosa as a corresponding move to Jake being optioned. Barrosa has had a pretty decent start to the season down in Reno. He is hitting 295 with an 857 OPS, 3 homers, 16 RBI. Those aren't super flashy numbers given the hitter-friendly environment down in Reno, but I guess I can understand where the D-backs are coming from here. There's probably some things with Jake McCarthy that they want to work on, and Jorge Barrosa has looked pretty good so far to start the year down in Triple-A.
For sure. And it also gives them the option to pinch hit for Alec if they want to against a tough lefty late in the game, and then be able to throw out there, a pretty solid defensive center fielder as well. He's probably got the best arm of anybody in that outfield group the moment his plane lands. So there's that to think about as well. And he'll get some games, starting against left-hand pitching when they give Alec a break. But I think, the big thing to look here for is that Alec Thomas gets runway now, where he was already taking over the playing time. I think he had 60 plate appearances to Jake's 47, so it was already starting to flow in his favor.
Yeah.
But I would look for him to get even a larger share, and he's going to have the opportunity to really show what he can do now. I mean, he's had a pretty good start to the year. He started off a little hotter. He kind of slumped back a little bit, but he's hit the ball pretty hard. I think he's been pretty legit. His numbers, I didn't double check his expected numbers. A little tough to do all that right now so early in the season. But I would say that Alec Thomas has earned the opportunity to get out there and get after it a little bit more.
Yeah, Alex' baseball savant page was quite red the last time. The last time I took a look, I'm pulling it up right now. He is at a 276 expected batting average, a 445 expected slugging percentage, 357 xWOBA, 91.9 mile an hour average exit velo. All of those numbers are pretty good across the board. And I guess from my standpoint, Jack, it kind of feels like this was sort of destined to happen from the beginning. Like the moment that you put both Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy on your opening day roster, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to have both of those guys. And we've seen this play out the last couple years, right? In 2024, it was a lot more Jake than it was Alec. Granted, part of that was a big part of that was due to Alec being hurt. And in 2023, we saw Alec Thomas getting quite a bit of play, whereas Jake McCarthy was back and forth from Reno the entire season. And it's a reason why we've wondered for a number of years if the Diamondbacks were going to pull the trigger on a trade, because it just doesn't make a ton of sense to have, an Alec Thomas in center field and then a left-handed hitting outfielder on the bench. So from a roster construction standpoint, this has always seemed like maybe this was destined to happen from the beginning.
Yeah, I think one thing you might wonder about, and this is probably overly speculative, getting inside somebody else's head, but I wonder if Alec going down the way he did last year, there was really no other option, and it freed Jake up to just play. And maybe, this year coming in a little bit more competition, and he was trying to do a little bit too much and got outside himself.
Yeah, I think that at least sounds like it could be possible. We'll have to see what these guys actually have to say. But yeah, an interesting situation. We certainly wish the best for Jake McCarthy. He was a really big part of this team last year. You know what he can do on the bases when he's able to get on base consistently. But unfortunately for him, his whole career has just been very, very up and down. And I guess the positive spin here is I think there's a pretty good chance we see Jake McCarthy back in the majors at some point. Hopefully for him, he's able to figure some things out down in Reno. We're going to jump into some conversation about the Diamondbacks bullpen. There's a number of storylines here that I think are worth covering, primarily AJ Puk going on the IL and Justin Martinez in a bit of an odd spot from an availability standpoint. We'll get into that on the other side of this break. But first, we want to hear a few words from the guys over at Foul Territory.
Todd, Father, I want to pull a very expensive card out of a pack. Very difficult to do and very expensive. I can't pay for it. Okay. How could I acquire that card?
Simple. Instead of driving somewhere, you go on Arena Club, go get you a slab pack, and you'll have some of the best cards you're ever going to see. Some one-of-ones, some cards that you want to have and you can't get out of your home. Go right online, check out Arena Club.
Yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. And every time you rip a slab pack, Arena Club will make you an instant offer for your card based on its market value. That's right. No guessing, no waiting. Instant offer for the estimated fair market value. You can accept it on the spot. You can use that cash for another slab pack, or you can buy, sell, trade. This platform has it all for the collectors out there. And right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
So on Friday, the Diamondbacks Twitterverse sort of broke because they played a pretty insane baseball game, and Torey Lovullo opted not to use his two primary back-end relievers in AJ Puk and Justin Martinez. It turns out, Jack, that as we suspected in that post-game show that night that we did on Friday, that there were some things happening behind the scenes that had not been made public at that point. We'll get to Justin Martinez's situation in a second, but I want to start with AJ Puk. Granted, he had already pitched back-to-back games. I think there were valid reasons for not pitching him on Friday, even if he wasn't hurt. But news broke on Saturday morning that AJ Puk was headed to the injured list with elbow inflammation. The initial reports here don't sound too bad, but the MRI results, at least as of the time of this recording, have not been made public yet. So, Jack, I guess we're still kind of waiting here for an update on AJ Puk.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that they knew that he was hurt Friday morning.
Yeah.
So before that, it wasn't just unavailability. He was injured. His elbow was stiff, probably couldn't move it or straighten it. He did say over the weekend, I think on Saturday or Sunday, I think on Saturday he was interviewed, and he said, well, I can move it a little bit better now. So that, I guess, is encouraging. And look, if Justin Martinez was still unavailable on Sunday, then obviously he certainly wasn't available on Friday. So I think it just goes back to the old adage, it's best to wait until we at least have more information before we react. It's a little frustrating to watch people overreact when they don't have the information. And then once the information contradicts their designated position, then it gets into all sorts of twisted logic just to try to justify a previously, incorrect position. Look, I make mistakes all the time. There's things I don't understand all the time. And how many times have you sat with me in the press box and we look at each other and I'm like, why is he doing that? But I wouldn't tweet it out because I want to go and ask him first, hey, what's going on here? And so that's my advice just to folks, to try to maintain your sanity a little bit and not have to backtrack on Twitter or wherever. Wait for the news to come out and then make an evaluation. That way you're not stuck and boxed in a corner.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I think that's very fair. It's not to say that 100% of the time that Torey Lovullo would do something questionable in a game, that there always is going to be some reasonable explanation after the fact. Some news is going to come out that is going to make his decision make sense to us. Like, I think Torey would be the first to admit that he does make mistakes as a manager, right? And so certainly there's a time to be critical. But yeah, in this particular situation, there was a lot going on behind the scenes here. Puk, we don't have a ton of information on yet, as I said earlier. Hopefully those MRI results will come out pretty soon. But it sounds to me, Jack, from what we've heard so far, I believe Mike Hazen talked about this on the radio the other day, and he basically said that we're not too concerned about it, but given how important AJ Puk is to this baseball team, it wasn't worth taking any risk. Like, this is just 15 days. Even if we're giving him a little bit more time than he needs, it's worth doing that to help out this team in the long run.
Yeah. As long as we don't hear the dreaded words like, oh, well, we need to get a second opinion or whatever, we're waiting for a second opinion. That's the worst thing to hear, short of the actual worst possible news. As long as we don't hear something like that, and if they say, well, it looks like it's not going to be that bad, it's just inflammation, he just needs to rest and get it out, then my question to Torey is going to be, do you have a timeline for when he can begin throwing again? And, not when he's coming back, but when can he start playing catch on flat ground, and then what boxes does he have to check? Those are the discussions to have. It's always a little tough to pin him down at that point. But, I probably will be a little aggressive in pushing for like, when can he play catch? Because if it's not within this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then he's going to miss more than 15 days. All right. I mean, that's just basically the way that goes, because they have to throw, then recovery day, and get, feedback, how they're feeling. Okay. And then they schedule the next outing. Maybe it's a bullpen, or maybe it's catch from a greater distance, however they want to do it. And yes, he's a reliever, so he doesn't have to get built up to a big workload, but they still need to check off boxes with several throwing sessions that he shows that he's recovered from with no ill effects, before they can really ramp it up and say, okay, we'll go face live hitters over at Salt River and then come on back and pitch for us. So, there's a possibility it could be 15 days, and that'd be great. But if Torrey can't tell us when he's going to throw the ball next, when we ask him tomorrow, then I'll remain skeptical about a 15-day return.
I think that's fair. You can understand the Diamondbacks wanting to be cautious here. AJ Puk is a very important part of this bullpen. In the meantime, it does leave them in a bit of a precarious spot from a left-handed side. Jalen Beeks is obviously on the major league roster, pitching very, very well. But Joe Mantiply was optioned recently, and then now you have the injury to Puk. So Jalen Beeks now stands alone as the Diamondbacks' only lefty in their bullpen currently. And again, he's pitched very well, but that can be difficult to operate that way for a long period of time. So it would certainly be good for the Diamondbacks if AJ Puk is able to come back soon. I guess the other part of this conversation, Jack, is that there are certain guys on this team that have fared pretty well against lefties in the past, even though they are right-handed. Shelby Miller comes to mind there, a guy who has yet to allow a hit to a left-handed batter in 2025. He's allowed only one hit all season, which still blows my mind. Probably someone who deserves a lot more conversation than he's already getting. Although there has been some buzz about Shelby in the early going for sure. But yeah, he's a guy that you can maybe lean on against some of those tough lefties late in games. Jack, I don't know if there's anyone else that comes to mind for you as someone who can pick up the slack a little bit while AJ Puk is sidelined with this injury.
Well, just to stay on Shelby for a minute, he has faced 200 left-hand batters over the last 2+ seasons since 2023. And his batting average against is 113 against left-handed batters. So I just wanted to emphasize that because, we're not talking about just a small sample size. Now, you had mentioned to me why you think Shelby's effective against lefties. I think our listeners would like to know about that.
Yeah, I mean, you think you've seen so far this year, one of the pitches that has really been important for Shelby is his splitter, a pitch that, at least to my recollection, Shelby didn't even throw when he was last a member of the Diamondbacks almost a decade ago now. That pitch is really a big part of why he's been able to have this kind of resurgence a little bit later in his career. And splitters are pitches that generally move down, right? There's not a ton of horizontal movement there. If they're actually moving for Shelby, they would be moving away from a left-handed hitter. So, you see guys who rely a lot on pitches that move to the arm side, like a slider or sweeper or something like that. Those pitches would be moving, if you're a right-handed pitcher, those pitches would be moving away from a right-handed hitter, but they'd be moving toward a left-handed hitter. And that generally makes it so they're not as effective to left-handed hitters. You're just able to see the ball that much better. But for Shelby, splitter is a pitch that tends to be a little bit more neutral when it comes to your splits. So yeah, that's certainly an advantage that he has.
Okay, appreciate you telling us all about that.
I know a thing or two, Jack.
Master pitch analysis.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But yeah, the other big part of this conversation is Justin Martinez, who, in this case, I had no questions watching the game yesterday, the way that it unfolded, that something was up with Justin Martinez. Say what you will about Torey Lovullo's bullpen management. He certainly would have used Justin Martinez in one of the extra innings at the very least in that game on Sunday, and we never saw him. Shelby Miller was called upon to pitch 2 innings, and then Dre Jameson, in his first outing back from Tommy John surgery, was called upon in a very tight situation in the bottom of the 11th. The ghost runner on second base representing the tying run. He was able to get the job done, but certainly that's not the way Torey would normally have drawn it up. And after the game, Jack, we got a very odd update with regard to Justin Martinez, that he was unavailable, but that he was not hurt, just fatigued. So Torey talked about how, because of his usage so far in the season, I think specifically early in the season, because he hasn't been used much at all over the past couple of weeks, but because of that usage, apparently Justin Martinez is feeling some fatigue, and so even though he had last pitched on Thursday, the Diamondbacks felt the need to hold him out the entire weekend in Chicago. So we do know that this is arm fatigue. This is not just like general body fatigue or whatever. That came out in Nick Picoro's story over at the Arizona Republic. But this is a bizarre situation, Jack, because it is not often that pitchers who are healthy are feeling fatigued after pitching, I think it was 4 times in the previous 16 days leading up to Sunday. This is not a guy who has really been used all that much in recent days.
Well, it sounded like what we often refer to as dead arm. And that happens usually in spring training, but it can happen in early mid-April. We may not see it in his most recent velo readings. Certainly we'll have our eyes pegged to the gun when he pitches next, whenever that is, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The next time he pitches, we'll be looking very closely to see what that stuff looks like, because dead arm can be a lot of different things. And it really can, if you Google it, you're going to find from pretty benign explanations to some really dire potentialities there with shoulder injuries and all of that. So, I mean, there's a bit of a red flag here, but the way they're describing it, it just really sounds like a dead arm phase to me. It's not that unusual. I think it's important to make the distinction that it was Martinez told the trainer he was not able to go, and then the trainer told Torey. So that's how that went. It wasn't like Torey made a decision even to not use him. He was told that the athlete said he can't go, and Torey even said, "I respect the athlete." I mean, what's he going to say? No, get out there and pitch anyway. I mean, so again, these situations, I mean, they're unfortunate. It's certainly something that's very concerning. If there's anything really wrong with him beyond just needing a few extra days of recovery to get over a dead arm phase, then that would be pretty devastating, all the way around. I mean, they just signed the guy to an extension. Puk is on the IL. Now, if they lost Martinez for any period of time, all of a sudden their bullpen is a shambles. But there is a Chinese saying, which roughly translate, in crisis there is opportunity. Wei Qi. So the Chinese characters in the word crisis, it means there's danger and there's opportunity. And in this case, you already mentioned Dre Jameson. He didn't even know that he was going to have to go into the game until just before he realized Martinez wasn't warming up. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to have to pitch. So I better get in there and just throw strikes." And that's what he said after the game. And sure enough, he came through. I mean, line drive double play, took out the ghost runner, and then he got the last out. So, it's great to see him back. He throws mid to high 90s. He's got almost a starter's repertoire. Then we had Juan Murillo come up.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting strikeout of Kyle Tucker to get out of an inning. I mean, there's some really good opportunity for the Diamondbacks here to build out this power bullpen. And if they dodge a bullet with Puk's injury, and if they dodge a bullet here with Martinez's dead arm, and both those guys can get back, meanwhile, at least they have some power arms that can fill the gaps while they need to. One point I do want to make is Beeks has thrown 13 innings, given up 1 run. Shelby's thrown 10 innings and given up no runs. Those are both unsustainable paces as well. And Torrey's going to have to back off those guys a little bit pretty soon. Likely he's going to lean on them this series, but at some point over the next week, he's going to have to back off them because their usage is getting up there.
For as great as Shelby Miller has been, yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. You don't want a guy like that throwing 80 innings for you or whatever over the course of a season. Juan Murillo is interesting to me, Jack. He came out and it was just 1 inning, right? There was a walk in there. He walked the first batter he faced, but he did have a couple of strikeouts, including that strikeout of Kyle Tucker. His four-seam fastball averaged 98.7 miles an hour in that game. The movement numbers, for those who want to geek out with me about the induced vertical break, were just over 17 inches, which isn't anything crazy, but it is good. It is pretty good shape in addition to obviously elite velocity, and the slider is looking, at least from a movement standpoint, looks pretty impressive too, with several more inches of drop than compared to pitchers with similar release points and whatnot. So they might have something there. I think at the very least, there's something to be said for the Diamondbacks needing an extra reliever, and they reach down into Triple-A, and it's a guy who throws 99, right? Like, this is not really what we've seen from this team much over the last decade plus, right? A lot of times when they've needed an extra reliever, it's someone from Triple-A who's probably throwing in the low 90s, relying more on deception than anything else. We'll, of course, have to see how well Murillo is able to command the ball in the grand scheme of things, but I'm sure from a fan's perspective, you'd rather watch Juan Murillo go out there and throw 100 miles an hour by guys than someone who's more of a soft tosser, relying on on movement and other factors.
Yeah, he's a guy that, to kind of bring it back to a more basic approach, how many times do you have a guy that throws really hard, has good movement on his pitches, but has no idea where they're going?
Yeah.
And, he was signed by the Dodgers. He started playing for them in the Dominican Summer League all the way back in 2016. His career minor league walk rate is 4.5 per 9. In 23, it was over 6 per 9. In 24, it was over 5 per 9. So it's understandable why the Dodgers basically, they had to give up the roster spot. And the D-backs pounced. Now, Murillo only walked 1 batter in spring training, and he only walked 2 batters in Reno during his time there. So if this is a guy that's not issuing walks, of course, he walked the first batter he faced in the major leagues, which was kind of funny and ironic. But if he's got, a 3 walk per 9 rate, or even 3.5, with the way his fastball moves and the amount of swing and miss he can get, they've really got something there. If he's up 4.5 walks per 9, then it's going to be inconsistent. The days he walks a couple guys, it's going to be a struggle, and the days he doesn't, he'll look fine. So that's the whole thing. Was he 26 years old? It's not too late. Yeah, but we've seen this story over and over and over again with hard throwers. If he can ever learn how to control the ball, if he ever figures out where it's going, well, this may be a guy that's figured out where it's going. And if he has, then it's going to be pretty exciting to watch.
Justin Martinez is certainly an example of that kind of pitcher, right? It's not to say that J Mart doesn't occasionally still have command issues. You will still see lapses every now and then, but for the most part, it's been really good so far this year. I guess my last point on this is that, guys like Murillo, the fact that Shelby Miller is pitching as well as he is, the fact that Jalen Beeks continues to pitch really well, I think that the Diamondbacks in recent seasons, Jack, like their top reliever getting hurt and their other top reliever being in kind of a precarious situation as Justin Martinez is right now, that would have been just utterly devastating for the bullpen, right? I mean, we saw, granted, Paul Sewald last year did not wind up having the kind of season that people hoped he would, but there was still an element of him getting hurt at the right as the season was getting started that was like, that is a huge blow to this bullpen before the season even began, right? Whereas the arms that this team has assembled, I'm not saying that the Diamondbacks bullpen is going to be great without AJ Puk, especially not if Justin Martinez is hurt as well. But they have some guys like Shelby Miller's given up 1 hit this year, right? So maybe they could find a way to hold serve until some other guys get healthy. We want to transition to the Sunday game, the finale of the Cubs series, which I think is responsible for Diamondbacks fans feeling probably okay about themselves, as opposed to being, if the Diamondbacks had gotten swept at Wrigley, I think this would be a dark, especially dark time for fans of this team. But they found a way to pull out a win in 11 innings on Sunday. It was a crazy game. The weather was not good. They started the game late, and then not very far into the game at all, they wound up having to stop once again. The whole game took 5 hours or something like that. But Merrill Kelly, Jack, was really the story in that game. 5 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. That's a good outing on any day, and particularly on a day where he had to start pitching and then wait for, I think it was close to an hour, if I'm not mistaken, was the second delay. And then he went back out there and allowed an RBI single and then nothing else the rest of the game. 16 in a row set down to finish his outing. Pretty impressive stuff from the D-backs righty.
Yeah, Kelly has simply become the team's best pitcher again. He's got 3 straight quality starts, 4 out of 5, or close to 4 out of 5.
5 2/3, technically not a quality start, but I think we can all agree that that's still a quality start in another sense, right?
His ERA is still inflated because of 1 bad outing in New York, but clearly he's been the most consistent starter since that time.
Yeah,
and best starter since that time, but removed with a cramp again.
Yes,
and again, the start, the stop, did that play into it? I don't know. I mean, in the past, it was because it was too hot and muggy and sweaty in Chase Field, or, he's had these problems in all different conditions now. And all I can say about it is it's part and parcel of who Merrill Kelly is. It's something that we're always going to have on our minds, whether or not he's going to be able to get through an entire start without it cropping up. When it doesn't, he's probably going to be really good 3/4 of the time. He might have an occasional mediocre or poor outing, but when he doesn't have that problem, he's going to be a good pitcher. You just hope and pray that it's nothing overly serious, like related to his past circulatory issues that required him to get the thoracic outlet surgery, or the blood clot that he had in his leg that time. I mean, if these cramping issues are related to that, then you worry about him as a person, as a man, somebody who I respect and admire greatly. So it would really bug me a lot to have this become something beyond just cramping. And so, like he said, we'll turn over more rocks and try to figure it out and go from there.
It just is kind of a thing that you and I were talking earlier off air, and it's a little hard to imagine the cramping thing just ever not becoming something that you think about when Merrill Kelly takes the mound. It certainly is not happening every single time he's out there, but you kind of know in the back of your head at this point, this has happened enough times to where it feels like it can happen anytime, right? I mean, I imagine if he's pitching in 50-degree weather or something, like maybe that would position him a little bit better, but I don't think it was very warm in Chicago yesterday, Jack. So that kind of throws out the narrative of, it's just Chase Field getting a little bit too warm, which is something that a lot of us have experienced. That was not the case at all at Wrigley Field on Sunday. So that continues to be a storyline. Hopefully the Diamondbacks are able to make some sort of progress in that regard. Just as a baseball fan in general, you hate seeing very talented athletes like Merrill Kelly constantly held back by something that feels so minor and yet just keeps popping up over and over again.
Jesse, I lost your audio.
There we go. Now we're back. That Cubs series as a whole did not go the way the Diamondbacks fans would have liked, but nonetheless, they sort of avoided disaster by salvaging a game on Sunday. And they're 13-9, Jack. And through 22 games, that's a pretty decent place to be.
Yeah, it was a little unfortunate on that Saturday game. Zach got knocked around the first couple innings. He settled down and had 4 very strong innings following that. So that's a positive to pull out of it for sure. But the bottom line is he was falling behind in the counts, and when he came into the zone, he got hit. And this is a pattern that we've just seen repeating quite a lot. From everything I've looked at, I think that zone contact and getting kind of hurt on pitches in the zone is something that really started coming up more often over the second half of 2023. And the one thing you can see when you really look at the granular details is his ability to, or willingness to come into the zone really started dropping off drastically by the last 5-6 weeks of 23. And, his zone percentage, his strike percentage, he had a 65%, first strike rate, I think, or something like that. I'm sorry, not first strike percentage through 2023. And then in 2024, that dropped to like 55 or 8. And this year it's like 51. So, I mean, it's just, I might be a little off on the numbers, but the point is that he's seen precipitous drops in his strike percentage since 2024, and it's continued its downward trend into this season. And personally, I think it's because he's nibbling around the edges because he's worried about getting hit when he comes into the middle.
Yeah, that's a totally reasonable theory. I mean, I guess you could also, like, to me, some of these fastballs are missing by so much that it doesn't feel like nibbling. It feels like a guy who just can't command the baseball the way that we're used to seeing. But I have the first pitch strike numbers in front of me, and you're absolutely right. It was 66.1% in 2023 and then 58.8% last year. And now we're down to 55.7%, which is below the league average. I believe league average first pitch strike rate, I want to say, is about 60%, something like that. So Gallen went from being well above average in that regard to now being well below average. And that's just not who this guy has been for the vast majority of his career.
Yeah, and I think that, look, the pitching coaches are onto it too. I mean, there was a little bit of discussion about that with Brian Kaplan. And, he was quoted basically in one article as saying, he needs to think about it a little bit less and just get up there and challenge hitters and let the chips fall where they may, so to speak. Because what he's doing right now is just not working for him. It works once in a while. We get a start like that 13 strikeout game, but, just too often we're seeing these types of outings. The offense was flatter than a pancake that day. They had 3 hits, all by Corbin Carroll till the 9th inning. And then Tim Tawa hit a home run in the 9th inning. That didn't mean anything. But it was nice to see him get one. So, it wasn't a good game for the D-backs by any stretch. But Cubs are behind them. Unfortunately, if it ever comes down to it, on a tiebreaker scenario, they will not hold the tiebreaker with the Chicago Cubs if it matters come wild card time. So these series do matter. Every game matters.
I still got the Cubs winning the Central, Jack. So if that happens and I'm right, then the Diamondbacks won't be competing with the Cubs for a wild card spot. But who knows? Here I am underestimating the Brewers, and that seems to backfire every single season. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, you're right that the Diamondbacks offense, they had that 10-run outburst in the 8th inning on Friday, and then Saturday was just very, very lean. Meanwhile, the Cubs, from the 8th inning of Friday's game to the 2nd inning of Saturday's game, they scored 17 runs against the Diamondbacks in a 4-inning span. And then they went quiet the rest of the game. Zach Gallen was able to settle in. The bullpen put up some zeros, but yeah, this offense just wasn't able to do enough to really compete in that game. The Sunday game was, there were a lot of different storylines there beyond Merrill Kelly, but one that definitely stands out to me, I referenced it briefly earlier, is that Dre Jameson has made his return to the majors after having Tommy John surgery in late 2023. And did he sort of get bailed out by a very, very hard line drive that turned into a double play? Yes, that did happen. But nonetheless, good to see Dre Jameson back out there. And at least from a velo standpoint, it was up to 99 miles an hour, very much the pitcher that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I think the other thing notable here, Corbin Carroll, 5 for 15. Those 5 hits all came in the first 2 games. One of them was a top, swinging bunt, but
Right.
Obviously he had a home run. He hit some balls hard too. He had his 22-game on-base streak and 12-game hit streak snapped on Sunday, so he'll have to try to start a new one on Tuesday against the Rays. But he's still right up there with over 1,000 OPS and one of the top players in the league. It's a lot of fun to see him continue to have the type of season that he's having.
Josh Naylor also had a good series, continues to be a huge part of this D-backs offense. He was 5 for 13 with a couple of RBI. And Jack, he came so close to stealing home in the game on Sunday, and that would have been one of the greatest storylines of the season. But unfortunately, he was just barely out. It was very close. It was very, very close, but that didn't quite work out for him.
Yeah, he went on his own, but he didn't have a red light.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know. I don't know if Josh Naylor's a guy I'm typically going to give the green light to steal home when he's standing on third base. But wouldn't be my personal first choice. But that was his decision to go. And he talked about it afterwards. He thought that if the throw was not, if the pitch was just a little inside, a little outside, he would have made it. He thought he had it timed, but he did not. But funny little, hey, he's no longer leading the team in stolen bases, I think, correct?
I was just looking that up because I was like, hey, how can Josh Naylor not have the green light if he's leading the team in stolen bases? He is now tied for the team lead with Corbin Carroll. They both have 4 stolen bases. That was the first time Naylor was caught, though. So he is now 4 for 5, 80%. Still a pretty decent percentage. So
I'm not sure if 4 stolen bases and 4 homers. Is he on pace for 30 seasons still?
Let's see. That's in 22 games. So, it's really close. He's like
we got a
right
math
on the
teacher
edge.
here, everyone.
Yeah, I'm not running the numbers down exactly. It depends on how many days off Torrey wound up giving him, but he's very close to on pace for a 30-30 season. Corbin Carroll has 7 home runs, by the way, which is he's on pace for a heck of a lot more than 30 home runs. We'll see if he's able to continue that pace. Despite the game on Sunday, still another pretty good series from him overall. Before we get out of here, we do want to set the table for the Diamondbacks' upcoming series against the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays, Jack, come in 9-13. I find that to be pretty deceptive. I think this is a pretty good baseball team. They are last in the AL East coming into this series, but their run differential is +8. This is a team that I think has some talent. Pitching matchups, it's Zach Littell against Brandon Pfaadt on Tuesday, Taj Bradley against Eduardo Rodriguez on Wednesday, and then Drew Rasmussen against Corbin Burns in the finale on Thursday. Granted, these pitchers are probably not household names, especially for baseball fans out on the West Coast, but Littell, Bradley, and Rasmussen all have pretty solid track records. Rasmussen in particular, whose career ERA is under 3, and I believe his season ERA is under 1. He is off to a very, very good start. So something to watch in that Thursday game for sure.
Yeah, I think with Littell, he used to be a reliever. He was with the Giants, and probably people aren't really thinking of him in that way. But Tampa converted him to a starter in 23. And since he's been with Tampa as a starter, he's got a 3.73 ERA as a starting pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays since 2023. So he's been pretty solid. I think he's got 4 starts and an inflated ERA. I think he's had 2 good starts and 2 bad starts. And Rasmussen, Guy's got a 2.82 career ERA when he's healthy.
Yeah.
He's one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. Well, he's healthy. I mean, they built him up slowly last year, and he's just, was he 0.8 something right now? So that's Sunday's
0.87 with a 1.63 FIP. So all the numbers are pretty darn good right now for Drew Rasmussen.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, that's going to be a tough guy to get to on Thursday night. So, the pitching matchups are going to be interesting. See how it goes down. I'm 100% with you. Don't underestimate the Rays. For whatever reason, in my series preview over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI, I jokingly put home in air quotes for the Rays, playing their home games in Steinbrenner Field. And they got swept by the Red Sox and lost 2 or 3 to the Yankees. So they lost 5 or 6 in this most recent homestand. So, I think that at this point, what were they, 8-8 or something before then? So, or 8-6. So I think that you're spot on. They're a better team than their record shows. It's going to be a tough series. Tampa always seems to play the D-backs pretty tough. And they have some really good pitchers going. They also have a couple of really strong left-handed hitters. It was Jonathan Aranda. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. And Cam Isner. I mean, these guys both have over 1,000 OPS from the left side. That's like kryptonite for Brandon Pfaadt, who has a tough time against left-handed hitters. So be careful there.
Yeah, and Yandy Diaz, if I remember right, had like 3 straight 4-hit games or something ridiculous the last time the Diamondbacks played the Rays. So he is not off to a good start this season, but there are players in that Rays lineup that are better than the numbers that they've put up so far. So certainly a challenging series coming up. You talked about it on this show the other day, that the Diamondbacks have a stretch of 25 games that started with the Cubs series and will continue on well into May, where it's pretty good opponent followed by pretty good opponent. I don't think either of us are looking at this Rays team as being a real 9-13 team. And then the D-backs have the Atlanta Braves over the weekend, who also I think are pretty clearly a better team than their record shows. So some challenging opponents coming up for this Diamondbacks team for sure. That is everything that we have in this episode of Snakes Territory. We really appreciate you being here with us. On this video, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Over on the audio side, we'd really appreciate it if you would rate and review the show. That really helps us out. Jack does outstanding work covering the Diamondbacks over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. That's si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. Be sure to check that out for previews of all these upcoming games, as well as coverage from Chase Field throughout this week with updates on AJ Puk and Justin Martinez and so forth. Jack, anything else here before we say goodbye?
I think we're ready to roll. This is going to be an interesting week at Chase Field, and very much looking forward to covering it and bringing everybody all the news.
Well, thanks again to all of you for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.